everyone, welcome to the third video of this Drupal migration basic. So today I'm going to teach you about how to write a Drupal migration YAML. So in Drupal migration YAML, there's actually three main parts, which is the source, the process, and also the destination. The source actually is quite equivalent to the extraction phase of the ETL process. Or process is more of the transformation phase, and destination is more to the loading phase. But before writing any part of the source, process, or destination, we always must mention what is this migration about. So it's sort of like a configuration and also the metadata of this YAML file. So the first part is the ID. So for the ID, we should be writing how to say a more understandable migration name for this YAML. For example, this is more like a demo migration or maybe like an organization migration. So I'm just gonna put the name organization migration migration because this file is about organization migration. For the second part is actually the label. So a label is like a short description of what this migration is about. So for me, I mean, for this just a very short demo. So I would just put it as an organization migration from maybe JSON. Okay, so this is the label. And finally and lastly is the migration. Oh, sorry, migration group. So you you can put it all as the same name if you have like a group of migration that should be run together, or you want to categorize the migration. For example, for this one is a organization. How to say, it's more like a demo migration for me. So I would just put it here, demo migration. So I know that this group is for demo. So finally, we come to the source part, which is where we want to read from the data. So for source, we usually like for source, process, and destination, there's always they always start with a plugin. And for the plugins, because we are loading from a file, so we are using like a URL to get the path to the file. And for data, fetcher plugins mean like how are you gonna fetch the data? For this demo, we are fetching our data from locally, not online. There's two choice to fetch it from online. We'll be using HTTP, but we're using locally, so it'll be found. And another part is the data parser plugin. So after you fetch the data, how are you gonna parse the file? I mean, once you fetch the file, how are you gonna parse the file? So because we are loading from a JSON, so the parser will be a JSON. Or maybe you are reading from XML, then you could put here XML. Okay. So so where are the pathway to the to our file? We'll be using URLs, and a bit of explanation of what public means. Public means like for normally Drupal, they will save, it will save every, how to say, your file, your photos, your configuration all in this file document. So this pathway here. So it will be in your web sites, default files, and this is where the public actually meant. So because I save the demo.json inside this migration folder, so I add here migrations. Yep, here migration, and the JSON name is called demo. So this is basically done. And the last part here is the item selector. So for the item selector, it actually means from which key you'll be reading from. For me, I'll be reading here from the organization in US spelling. So once you set up all this, you basically won't be modifying any part of it this after in the future. So finally, we'll be in going into reading the fields. So the fields here means like the different keys here in this JSON. So we have ID, name, and also short description. And yeah, it's sort of okay. So name is actually the variable that you'll be using throughout this YAML code, because ID later you'll be calling this variable ID inside the process. And for the we will this for label is actually optional whether you want to put label or not, but the important part is the selector. Selector means like what key is it reading from. So for this we're reading from ID, and the same goes to the name, and finally the okay. So take note that the short description is a string, so we must always put the apostrophe in front and the back. Yeah, so this is the correct way. Don't always trust AI to write your code. And lastly is the unique ID that you want the data to read from. So IDs is sort of how to say, to make sure that you are reading each data uniquely and to avoid like duplication, or maybe sort of you some organization might have the same name. If you use the name as a unique ID, then some later data might be overwriting the old data. So you need to make sure you're addressing the ID uniquely. So I assume, I mean, the demo, there's only like 5 items with different names, so you don't have to worry much. But the more data you have, sometimes they might have an overlap ID. For example, say some people might have the same name, so it's important to note that. Okay. So and type integer. So because you can see here this ID is an integer, so I will just put the type as integer. So we finally come to the process part of the data migration. For this video, I won't be explained too much on process because it's gonna take a long time because there are so many different process plugins. So for this case, all our data are actually direct mapping. For example, the title, which is by default, every item will have a title. Will the name will be mapped to the title, and for the field ID, the ID will be mapped into the field ID, and for the field short description, it will be mapped, I mean, the short description will be mapped to the field of the short description in the previous video that we have created in the content type. So I'm not going to explain too much on this. We'll just proceed to the destination. For destination is what like where are we specifying this data will be loading into, like what type of entity will it be creating. So again, most of the item will start with plugin. And because this is a node, we are creating an organization node. So the entity node is correct. And for the default bundle, it's actually mean the machine name, the content type name that we created I think in the previous video we created with the UK English, I guess. Yeah. So that's basically it. This is a simple Drupal migration YAML that we have created. One thing I want to mention is each process have their own plugin, and in this direct mapping, when you expand it, it's actually a plugin called get and the source. But because most of the time we have a lot of direct mapping, I think that's why the developer decided to just shorten this code into just one line. And yeah, so this is the basic understand of it. And another thing I forgot to mention, like beside entity node, there's also like entity taxonomy term. And if you want to migrate user, there will be an entity user. And also in Drupal, there's a type of entity called paragraph. So there are a few entity that you can go and research and see which one is you'll be using. But most of the time, you'll probably be using the node. Thank you. So that's all for today's video. And I will see you again soon to teach you more about the different process plugin that I found quite complicated and probably need more explanation, and also different, and also how to export this migration, and a few things that you need to understand if you want to modify the migration in the future. Thank you.